Ever wonder how a country actually pays for everything? I mean, everything, from the day a person is born to the day they die. It is a massive economic puzzle. Well, in this explainer, we're diving into a really groundbreaking study from the Taub Center that gives us a whole new way to look at Israel's economy, not just as one big picture, but across all of its generations.
All right, here's our game plan. First, we'll introduce this new economic lens. Then we'll see how it maps onto your own life. After that, we'll scale it up to the national level, zero in on a key number for Israel, and finally, talk about what all this means for the future. So let's get into it.
So let's start with a really fundamental question. It's a question that pretty much every modern country is trying to figure out. I mean, just think about the sheer scale of it all. Education, healthcare, roads, security, pensions, the list just goes on. And because we're all living longer these days, that challenge of funding this entire system just gets bigger and bigger. And this is exactly where this new way of looking at things comes in. This incredible research comes to us from a team at the Taub Center for Social Policy Studies in Israel. We're talking about Professor Alex Weinreb, Kirill Schraberman, and Professor Avi Weiss. And what's so important here is that they are the very first to produce these kinds of estimates for Israel.
The method is called National Transfer Accounts, or NTA for short. You can think of it like an economic MRI for an entire country. It lets us see, with incredible detail, how money actually flows between different age groups. And this helps us pinpoint the times in our lives when we consume more than we earn, something economists call a life cycle deficit. And you know what? Understanding that one idea is the key to this whole story.
So let's bring this down from that 30,000-foot view right down to your life. Because it turns out, when you look at it through this NTA lens, our economic lives really break down into three distinct periods of deficit and surplus.
First up, we have what's called the deficit of youth. Now in Israel, based on the 2018 data, this period lasts from birth until about age 31. It makes perfect sense, right? In these years, you're consuming a lot, schooling, healthcare, you name it, but your income from work is pretty low, if it exists at all. So this deficit has to be covered by others, mainly your family and the state.
Then, right around age 32, everything flips. You enter the surplus years, and this phase lasts until you're about 60. And let me tell you, this period is the absolute economic engine of the entire country. For the first time, your labor income is higher than your consumption. This is when you're able to save, to invest, and, crucially, to pay the taxes that support both the young and the old.
And finally, starting around age 61, the cycle completes and we enter the deficit of retirement. Your income from work drops off, but your consumption needs, especially for things like healthcare, often stay high. So you're back in a deficit, but this time it's financed by a lifetime of savings, your assets, pensions, and of course, public support.
Okay, so that's the economic story of one person's life. Now let's zoom out. What happens when you've got millions of people all in one of these three stages at the exact same time? How on earth does an entire country balance its books?
This quote from the report really nails it. At its core, for a national economy to stay stable, the total amount of surplus generated by everyone in their working years has to be big enough to finance the total deficit of all of the young people and all the older people combined. It's a massive national balancing act.
So how does society pull off this balancing act? Well, it happens through three main channels. First, you have private transfers. That's mostly within families. Second, public transfers. That's the whole system of taxes and government spending. And third, what are called asset-based reallocations, basically drawing on all our collective savings, pensions, and investments.
Now let's get really specific and apply this NTA framework directly to Israel. We're going to introduce a really key metric that this tool allows us to calculate for the first time.
It's called the Fiscal Support Ratio, or FSR for short. It's a pretty simple but powerful idea. It asks a straightforward question. What percentage of all public spending, from healthcare to pensions, is actually paid for by the taxes collected in a given year? If the FSR is 1.0, it means the system is perfectly self-funding.
So what was Israel's national FSR? In 2018, it was 0.79. In plain English, that means that all the taxes collected from the population paid for 79% of all public spending. That other 21% had to be covered by other means, like government borrowing.
But here is where the NTA method gets really interesting. Its real power is that it doesn't just give us that one national average. It allows researchers to drill down and calculate the FSR for different groups within the population.
And according to the Taub Center's analysis of that 2018 data, the FSR for Israel's Arab population was 0.44. For the Haredi population, it was 0.34. So this means that taxes paid by these groups covered 44% and 34% respectively of the public consumption and cash transfers they received.
And just for context, the study found that the FSR for the non-Haredi Jewish population came out to 0.95. So, taxes from this group covered about 95% of the public consumption that the group received. Now, looking at these numbers isn't just some academic exercise. Not at all. They have huge implications for long-term policy and for planning. This is really about getting a clearer picture of Israel's economic future. As the researchers themselves put it, these two measures, the FSR and the life cycle deficit, are absolutely critical tools for understanding the country's fiscal stability. And this is especially true in a country like Israel, where the demographic makeup of the population is projected to change pretty significantly in the coming decades.
And that's the real value here. This framework isn't just descriptive, it's predictive. Policymakers can actually use it to model the long-term financial consequences of their decisions. What would happen if you raised the retirement age? What's the fiscal impact of introducing core curriculum in all schools? This model provides a real, data-driven way to start answering those huge questions.
For a more detailed explanation of these results and others, see our accompanying NTA publications.